So I'm on today with Alison Marras. So I'm just getting to know, but we have some mutual friends and a lot in common. And she is the author of a really beautiful new cookbook called the Paleo Gut Healing Cookbook. I'm going to screen share it in a second here,
Yay!
Alison. But yeah, let me just tell folks a little bit more about you first. So, Alison is a nutritional therapy practitioner and cookbook author of the Paleo Gut Healing Cookbook, blogging over at the delicious gut healthy food blog Food by Marras. Alison has experienced firsthand the healing power of food, using it to manage Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, and PCOS. Oh, that's cool. She believes your healing journey with real food can be a stress free lifestyle filled with joy and flavor, and her content is here to help. Follow Alison for more paleo and AIP friendly recipes, meal plans, community, and coaching service. So we'll give some more freebies and resources from Alison in a minute here. But Alison, I'm curious about your story. Like, were you into natural medicine and cooking before you got sick, or did you kind of have to get into that out of necessity?
Yeah, I think like so many of us, I had to get into it out of necessity. I thought I was eating healthy with my whole wheat wraps and 100 calorie packs and smoothies and juice cleanses. I was just following mainstream sort
Sounds
of
very New
advice.
York.
Very New York, burning out in cardio and spin classes and working 60, 70-hour weeks. And I just burned out. It took such a toll. And the other sneaky thing, which I wonder if some of your audience can relate, I was on the birth control pill for about a decade
Mm.
because of the PCOS that I had since I was a kid. And that was the only option presented to me. And so, you know how that goes. It just covered everything up and was depleting me of nutrients. And so by the time I got off, right after I got married in my like mid to late 20s, everything just went crazy. That was my trigger.
Oh.
And that was kind of, the nail in the coffin, separately from the crazy sort of stressful lifestyle I was leading and growing up on the standard American diet. So that's when I started just taking control because nobody could help me. I was going to doctors, was being told nothing was wrong with me. Maybe I was aging. My hair was falling out in clumps. I lost like 75% of my hair in just a few
Oh my
years.
gosh.
And it
Wow.
that kept me like, there's nothing like looking in the mirror and just not looking like yourself, what feels like overnight. And so everything just kept compounding, getting worse. So that's what kept me on this path. And I became a health coach, and then I became a nutritional therapy practitioner. I started my blog because I was cooking in my tiny
Oh.
apartment. I was like, I got to cook for myself. I can't keep ordering takeout and juice cleanses. So, I kind of started by just sharing my journey. And then now I'm so blessed to be able to help other women going through similar struggles.
I love that. Well, I'll just piggyback to the end of that, which is I'm working with this new business coach, and he's really talking about like service first. And I noticed like friends of mine who really like just started sharing out of like their true like passion to like, oh my gosh, like this is helping me. Like, can I help you? It's just such a beautiful thing. And it always like grows so organically when you come from that place. And you're attracting people like you, I'm sure. A
Yes,
lot of the same,
exactly.
same struggles.
The type A burnout, autoimmune, gut issues, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, birth control, or yeah, any of it. Yeah, and we rarely actually talk about food and cooking on the show. It's so foundational, but it's just sort of, I think for just a few different reasons, it's sort of not my specialty. But yeah, it's so important, and we all can use like new inspiration. I think even if we've been eating well for a while, like sometimes I'm with my son and I'm just like, oh my God, well, I make like the same 10 things, like, and that's all I
We
make.
all get into those ruts. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So you didn't probably know this was coming, but you got off birth control. Your hair started falling out. Is that when you got diagnosed with Hashimoto's?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would say, but it took me like 3 years to get properly diagnosed. And that was
Ugh.
the struggle, is that I was just declining and getting much worse and worse, feeling crazy. I was changing my diet. It was just all Dr. Google until finally I was like, I got to go to a naturopath. Like it took that long for me to get through my head, like, oh, they're not testing me right. Cause I was going to endocrinologist, everything I was reading, I'm like, I think this is my thyroid. Like something is wrong with that. And nobody, was testing me properly, or at least reading the tests to look at it in an optimal way. So Yeah, took me quite a while to get my answer. And then once
Yeah.
you do get your diagnosis, that's a whole new journey you're on.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of focus in on gut healing and the paleo diet here. Maybe you can just help recap for some of our viewers and listeners that how autoimmunity develops and why healing the gut is so important there.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. And that's why this is so foundational to looking at. And so many times when we see that we have these autoimmune conditions, these illnesses, um, whatever the symptoms sort of are, joint pain, things that I was having, like the hair loss and all these other gut issues, IBS, SIBO, all these problems that keep coming, we always have to look at the gut and look at repairing and healing it because there's symptoms, those aren't really root causes. So many times I'll see people, they'll figure that out by Googling or going to a functional medicine doctor, and their doctor's like, here you go, paleo, like here's a handout. And it's helpful, and it's like, cool, oh my God, I could do something about controlling this. But some of the problems there are something you actually just touched on. We get stuck in these ruts, right? We get stuck feeling like, okay, I'm looking at the do not eat list. I'm freaking out a little and I have to change this all. And sometimes that leads to burnout or a reduction in what we're actually eating. So I always like to approach things in a more abundant mindset and thinking about, well, let's focus on all the foods we can eat and let's make it fun. I love, if you check out my blog, I love just recreating my favorite recipes to make them more paleo friendly. And so the thing with using paleo, right? Because I'm sure we've all heard of different diets that are helpful for gut healing. The reason that I love paleo so much is because it's a great template to just restore our body back to nature. We're going back to just good quality as best we can, animal protein, whole foods, vegetables, fruits. We're hopefully eating a little more seasonally. We're cutting out the hyper palatable processed foods, the refined sugar, and then things that may be inflammatory to those of us with autoimmune or leaky gut conditions. Oh yeah, there's me.
It always distracts people when I put the image up.
No,
like,
I love it.
just keep talking. I'll just give people something visual to look at here.
No, that's great. Yeah, so you can see, I mean, this is what I'm all about, is just like, how do we make this delicious and sustainable? And, a common issue that I hear from people is, yeah, okay, I'm trying to eat this way, but my family isn't going to eat this way. My friends don't eat this way. And so it becomes a barrier to us keeping up with it, to cooking at home, to feeling like everyone can eat at the same table. So I really like to recreate and make things so delicious that nobody's going to know. They're not going to know that it's paleo. They're not going to know if you're missing out on
Perfect.
things. Yeah.
I love that. What a fun idea just to work on not fixing, but upgrading like classic recipes that you like mushroom soup, which is delicious. But yeah, if you put in like a bunch of flour, no, it's not so good for you.
Totally. The flour, the cream, all this heavy stuff, or even just, processed foods. So this is where, I just felt like was so joyful for me, both for my own healing journey and then just connecting with my community to hear like, oh my goodness, my husband would never eat this and now he does. Like, it's shocking. So that's what's really exciting. Is when we can just have fun with this. It's easy. It's nothing crazy, no crazy, ingredients that we're gonna,
just
go
learning
pour,
some new recipes.
trying to pour.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love it. I couldn't resist like checking out this recipe.
Oh, it's a good one. It's super I had someone comment in my Facebook group. They're like, real story. I actually don't like mushrooms. I don't know why I made this, but I did. And I love mushrooms now. It's like, oh my God, why would you make a mushroom soup? That's amazing. But I was happy. I was like, good for you. So, and mushrooms are actually great for gut healing. I actually just posted about this on my Instagram. They're super rich in selenium and zinc, even just your regular baby Bella mushrooms, nothing bougie or crazy.
Yeah, and I often get the question about mushrooms with mold, like, aren't they moldy? Like, that's a fungus. It actually doesn't work that way. More mold grows on food because of the way it's stored, not being stored properly. So it's not necessarily the mushrooms. Yeah, mushrooms are really nutritious. I just posted it on Instagram recently. Some like list of high histamine foods. I got some like negative reactions. Like, these are healthy foods. Why are you taking them away from me? But I think that, sometimes for a short amount of time, we need to experiment. And I think that's what, or, we'll talk about your book in a minute here too. But yeah,
Mhm.
if for, especially when we've been diagnosed with autoimmunity, you're going through a major detox journey, whatever it
Yeah,
is, our guts are just wrecked. We can only eat like broccoli and noodles and chicken. Like
totally.
you've got to reset. And Allison, I
Mhm.
think, is offering a very like flavorful way to reset. So I like how you say, like, don't think about restriction. There's
Mhm.
still a lot of foods. I learned my lesson. I better have a list of foods that don't contain histamines next time.
Yes.
There's still a lot of foods you can eat, and just think of it as a temporary experiment. That's always
Mhm.
helped me a lot when I've done different diets. And then, I leave them knowing something new. So
Mhm.
I've done low
Exactly.
FODMAP diet. Yeah, I've done paleo. Wore a glucose monitor, and every time I learn something new about how to move forward, and it looks like with Allison, you're just gonna learn how to like have a better, menu of recipes to choose from at night or for lunch or for breakfast, so
Yeah.
that you can eat healthy.
It's all about making it sustainable because, we're all busy. And I know, so it's like for you and me, this is what we do for a living, but everybody else, this is not what they're doing for a living. Although managing our health can sometimes feel like a part-time, at least, job. But I just feel like, how can we just make this easy so it's actually sticking? We can teach people till we're blue in the face about using food as medicine and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, if we can't integrate it into our lives and we can't have fun with it, that's where the problem is. And I also have noticed, when we're feeling really stressed out by food because we are focusing so hard on the restrictions, we're not going to digest in that state. We need to be in a calm parasympathetic state. Otherwise, we're not digesting, we're causing more inflammation in the body. So that's kind of, it's not even gimmicky for me to be like, oh, I believe food as medicine can be joyful. I think it's got to be. It really has to be to all work.
That's a great point. Yeah, I was just talking to my team yesterday and we're brainstorming like challenges clients may face as they go through this journey. And I'm like, one thing I'm never going to create is meal plans. Like, it's just not how my brain works. Like, I don't
It's not
plan
easy.
nothing. So
A
good for
hundred
you.
percent.
You can come
Yeah.
here to get a meal plan. Because, yeah, some people just prefer to work that way. And they're like, this is my
Yes.
challenge. Can you give me a meal plan? So I think it's good to acknowledge like our own strengths and weaknesses. And this is a great way that if you are adopting some of this diet or you're in a rut, like I was saying earlier, try some new things with the
Yeah.
ingredients that, are going to heal you.
I would also say I totally agree with you. I remember in the beginning when people were asking me for meal plans, which makes sense. I'm a recipe developer. I was like, okay. At first I'm like, yeah, but that's not life, right? Like we don't live on a meal plan. But then I realized it's like, well, these are people that need examples. Like that's really more so the value is like, what do you mean when you say eat this much protein or eat this way for breakfast? Like, what do you mean? I need examples. And so that's where I think
Right.
I started learning, like, as I was creating it and people were giving me such great feedback, it was like, oh, that's how this is helping you. Duh. It's like for me, who I'm like always doing this stuff, it's sometimes it's hard to think about. But then also just having like the grocery lists already done for you and it's just like easy, like, okay, good, it's done, I don't have to worry. So I like to think that that's just a helpful way to start. And then by tuning into your body, keeping a little bit of a food and mood journal, really eating mindfully and focusing on that gut healing through all the different ways, not just food, that's when I think we start to take that great abundant mindset, how you even mentioned too, of like, yeah, I've tried different things and I've learned different things along the way. That's ideally what's happening is we're getting more in tune with our body.
That's a good point, and you may have inspired me, but I'm still not going to come up with meal plans.
No, you could
So,
just send them to
but
mine. That's
yeah,
okay.
but even like protocols, like I really
Yeah.
resisted. Like I'm just publishing a book on mold, and I was like, how can I pick a protocol? Everyone's
Mhm.
different. But I did, at least somewhat pick a protocol.
Mhm.
And I think it's like you said, if you suggest something and then there's just a vacuum, people
Totally.
don't know like what to do. But if you say
Mhm.
like, well, hey, here's a template, try it out, and then like modify it for you, and then make it part of your lifestyle. That I think you're right. So
Absolutely.
maybe that's inspiring me to know that like, okay, yeah, these things aren't like set in stone, but
Mhm.
they're a way to learn. And
Absolutely. It's just, a tool to provide those templates, I think it can be helpful. Otherwise, it just gets very overwhelming. Oh yeah, and I have to point out my book is on sale today. I randomly saw
Oh,
that this
really?
morning. Yeah,
Oh,
under 20
good.
bucks on Amazon today,
Oh,
which
it's
is
quite a bit
exciting.
on sale. So this is
Yeah,
so pretty. Did you have a
thank
traditional
you.
publisher or how did you go about it?
I did, yeah. I had a traditional publisher. They reached out to me right before the pandemic. And so I was like, yeah. And then the pandemic happened and we had to pause for a while and then we started it up. So it was fun to work on during lockdown. But yeah, I'm excited and I love to be creative. So I did my own photography and
Oh,
all the recipe
really?
development. Yeah,
Ah,
that's my creative side. I've always loved to do food photography and stuff. So I'm excited because the recipes I got to create food that I grew up with. I'm multicultural and I got to include a lot of family recipes and uh, also being a foodie from New York, I included some of my favorite restaurant foods and just really recreating it and making it easy and also just being able to give people the tools that they need to think beyond food because that was kind of the deal with when the publisher came to me about the cookbook. I'm like, okay, I want to do a cookbook, but I also, if we're going to do gut healing, I don't want people to overcorrect with food because that is a common issue that I see with diets in general, where people will keep eliminating to death and thinking that's alone will heal the gut and it won't. So I talk a lot about mindful eating. I talk about different ways to think about how we eat and not just what we eat as well.
okay. Yeah, and I kind of derailed us when we started talking about healing the gut because I do think it's really inspiring that sounds like you mainly or all healed with food, which frankly I don't think is easy. Like I think you can what I kind of see is you can kind of like half heal with food and
A
then
100%. Yes, that's so true.
but yeah,
That's
I'd
like,
love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, no, thank you for saying that because it's essentially that's how I started. And that has been a core thing in my life. Like I've never gone back to the standard American diet. I've stayed with real whole foods, nutrient dense foods, using paleo as a template. Um, and then seeing what worked for my body, right? Like on paleo, it's grain free, but I eat rice a couple times a week. I'm able to reintroduce like good quality cheese here and there. But I had to take, to your point, like even with histamine or FODMAP, I had to take a break. There was a point where my gut was so impaired that I couldn't even handle that anymore. But then I got to a point of healing with various protocols, working with practitioners, doing tests and things that I like GI map or whatever else that I
Nice.
needed to get to the bottom of. And so I had to heal at a root cause level. But the other thing is that I talk about is like mindset and stress management and our nervous state system. That's why I talk a lot about mindfulness and mindful eating because I started realizing like food was stressing me out and um, I had to come to come to Jesus a bit about my stress levels and how I was burning myself out, and I had to heal all of that. So I had to do some
Yes.
deeper work. So that was a huge part of it too. But when it comes to food, it definitely had a major impact along the way, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I've told part of the story, but I'll tell it again because I think it's interesting. So, when I didn't know I was in a moldy house, I was doing all the things to try to improve. And that's really when paleo was coming out. I was super stoked about a lot of things I was learning. I know I was like a very basic American cook, like nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
But I got into all of it,
Mm-hmm.
organ meats, bone broth.
Awesome.
I was, pretty much eating all my own food, having lots of salads. And I will say, even though I was still in that moldy house, my gut got really solid by eating
Mm-hmm.
that freaking well. So I think it can carry you a long way. And what I've kind of heard from speaking to other practitioner friends and some of them, well, I'll give you two examples. One was an MD, not on a good diet, not on supplements, nothing. And it hit her hard. And changing her diet and adding basic supplements made a huge difference. So there's that example. And then another friend of mine was already like hardcore healthy when she got exposed to mold. So it was like she was like kind of functionally getting by for a long time. So that's kind of why I said like I think there's a point where maybe food isn't enough, but it actually can carry you quite a ways. You're just getting
Absolutely.
those nutrients, and so yeah, it's such an important foundation. I think I just acknowledge that people like you speak to it better than I do, but and luckily clients come to us already eating pretty darn
That's
well.
great.
Yeah, they can
That's great. Because that's
reaching that
sometimes
whole
the biggest struggle. Yeah. It's
yeah,
like it's to ask people, sometimes it's jarring to ask them to give up certain things or be open to new ways of eating. So yeah, it's so I love those examples because everyone is so unique. And so I always talk about bioindividuality. And to your point, it's like, well, for some people, it could be the food that's greatly affecting them. And then for someone else, it's like, no, dude, it's the mold. Like, so it is. So it's like, go through it as that wheel of health. I'm sure we've all
yeah.
seen the different components to our health, and don't get stuck in one area. Like, go make your rounds. I always say, like, okay, cool. You cleaned up your diet, move on. Let's move on and go see what else is going on. Are you living in a moldy house? Are
Yeah.
you taking medicine that's bothering you? Like, let's look all around. Do you need to work on your mental health? Like, what else is going on for you? So I think that's
Yeah,
really key.
yeah. And none of it's like a waste of time, right? Like those years I
Sure.
spent learning to cook, making my house super non-toxic, except for all the mold in it that I didn't know about. But like I was just
Yes.
learning and doing so much that I learned about my adrenal glands and da da da. And like, all that has really laid a
Yes.
foundation for my practice and everything in my own life. So yeah, it's never a waste of time.
Never.
Okay, we had a couple comments here. Alicia was saying she just learned from an oat test she has mycotoxins. So while I take supplements, I still need to demold. I thought being almost vegetarian can help. So were you saying, Alicia, that you were a vegetarian or, plant-based, and then you found out you had mold and you're surprised you got it? I'd love to unpack that a little bit more. Angelina is saying, I have to say that paleo way of eating helps me shrink my fibroids big time. Awesome. And
Great.
PMS cramps, etc. A winner. My naturopath recommended
That's
it.
fabulous. Yeah, I would say for PCOS, my period, and when I work with clients too, it's the same thing. It's like, whoa, this is shifting. And sometimes that's just purely because we've removed so much of that sugar that throws our blood sugar off balance, which is fundamental to hormone balance. Like we have to be managing our blood sugar, and our adrenals for proper hormone balance. So that's really huge. And then by including nutrient dense foods, so more
Mm-hmm.
whole foods and good quality animal proteins, and to your point, the bone broths, the liver, the organ meats, that is giving us life, that is giving us nutrients in a more bioavailable way, than even just a supplement would do it. So that's really key too. I love to hear that.
Yeah, and the fiber really helps, I think, quite a bit too. Like just getting more like different variety of foods. Yeah, I know the paleo label has sort of changed, and I don't know, maybe fallen a little bit out of the trendy
Yeah.
trend.
I feel like keto surpassed paleo because it was all about weight loss, and that's what
Oh
will
yeah,
always win and be clickbait, I feel like. But to me, it's like paleo just feels, I don't know, just like getting back to nature in my mind, like that's really the idea. And I like that we can talk about a paleo lifestyle too, of like, get sunlight, get good sleep,
totally. It's not just the
move
diet, but
your
I still love
body.
paleo. Yeah, for
Me too.
many years, I would just people would be like, what do you eat? What do I eat?" And I'm like, I eat like a paleo template.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
finally, I decided I needed to relabel it a bit because similar to my resistance to creating protocols and meals, I was like, I guess I need like a template for people to follow. So my
Totally.
template is still basically paleo.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
always say paleo-ish, right? Because the idea is you try this and then you see what works for you. Like I said, like sometimes I eat a little bit of cheese, sometimes I eat a little bit of grains, but mostly paleo-ish.
okay, so Pam, I love that you guys are commenting. Thank you. It's more fun that way. Pamela is asking to describe the difference between paleo and keto, and she
Yeah.
also doesn't do real well with eggs. I'm with you,
Mm,
Pamela.
me
Like
too.
I wish I did really well with eggs. They're so convenient.
I can only have
But
them a couple times a week. I'm the same way. And I see this a lot. So I would love to address that. So keto is more geared towards high fat, right? And lower carb. And that's the idea. Paleo doesn't necessarily say that it needs to be low carb or any which way. You can do a low carb paleo. I certainly tend to do a little bit lower carb, but I still include carbs, especially for my thyroid. But that is very bio individual, whereas keto is pretty black and white about that.
Very low carb, right? How many, like
Exactly.
less than like 30 grams a day,
Yeah.
supposedly you're supposed to have?
And then I'll also see these like keto accounts where it's just like cheese on top of cheese on top of cheese. And it's like, well, I would have zits all over my face. Like, I don't understand that. So, that's kind of the main difference. I would also say keto is focused on getting you into ketosis and losing weight. So the thing with eggs, and here's something I always like to address about paleo. Sometimes a downfall I see when people go paleo: too many nuts, too many eggs. It, like, more so than you've ever eaten in your life. And so just by nature of that, too many nuts are going to cause constipation. They might be a food sensitivity to you. Suddenly everything like paleo breads and paleo baked goods and all these other things that we're now using to replace our old foods are still like not the best. So I really like to switch up my flours when I do end up baking, but I don't like to lean too much on baked goods. And then same with eggs, because to recreate that like fluffy sort of baking texture, a lot of eggs you'll see. So listen to your body and rotate. Do not, if eggs every day are a problem or too many eggs are a problem, I'm with you. I think Bridgit too, like once or twice a week for me is good. But what I will say, the autoimmune protocol, or autoimmune paleo, sometimes it's called, is egg free, nut free, nightshade free. And I had to go on that for a while, and it helped me actually reduce my Hashimoto's antibodies quite a bit. There's a lot of studies coming out about it. So that's something you can check out too, just to consider, like, maybe eggs are a trigger, maybe nuts, maybe certain things that you just kind of reduce or pull to the side.
Yeah, I think everyone's a little different with their sensitivities. Like, I've never met a nut that disagreed with me
That's
ever.
great.
Ever? I know, and I know it's their trouble for some people. I love all these questions, so I want to keep addressing
Yeah.
them. Um, let's see. Angelina was saying, many asked me, "Can you lose weight?" Oh, yeah, I think she's saying like, was she doing keto to lose weight, or? But yeah, you don't have
Mm,
to. When I was on that glucose monitor, I'd love to share that like, experience I had recently, and yeah, I certainly didn't get on it to lose weight. I was just sort of curious,
yeah.
and it was a little shocking about like my carbs and how much I spiked, especially in the evening. And I really was in that vacuum for a minute. I talked about it. It was like, what the F do I eat? Like, I can't hardly have any carbs. I thought I was doing pretty good. But it was, I need to really move my carbs to the morning. And I mean, I lost a few pounds there just because I like literally didn't have anything in the house and I knew how to eat. And then I started to learn and kind of adapt and brought in a little more eggs and dairy to experiment. But it's like, yeah, I kind of found my limit with all that. So I think there's that kind of part of the carb conversation too, is like, when
Mhm.
are you having the carbs and what are your goals? Oh, and then I wanted to mention Anna Quebecca's keto green diet, which I think she talks about coming in and out of keto, which I like that idea too. Like, sometimes you're, really watching your carbs and like fat burning, but you're not like being on it like all the time, because it's a lot being on any of these kind of carb watching diets all the
Right.
time. So yeah. Okay. And then Alicia was saying, back to her mold comment, that she was not vegetarian. Maybe some foods had unseen mold and mold in the house. She had mold and glyphosate in her oat test. So, yeah, so Alicia, you might find it interesting that the founder of the Great Plains Labs is really seeing on his interpretation of the tests, and they run thousands and thousands, that they aren't seeing that food is really raising mycotoxins, is not really nearly as much as a waterborne, water damaged building. So I think you're maybe saying like maybe there was some food, mold on my food I didn't know about. It's usually more on like grains, like popcorn or cheap coffee, which usually my
Yes.
clients are not eating,
Right.
like popcorn
I'll
kernels. Yeah.
totally and even oats I'll see a lot, like oatmeal I've heard is a thing
Yeah.
too. So that's a great point, because I do think we always go to the food right away. And I think it's important to understand that delineation.
Yeah, and the glyphosate, unfortunately, Alicia, yeah, it's shocking how much we carry around, even when we're eating organic and stuff. So, having, really good filtered water, you can use some apple cider vinegar or a little bit of kombucha if you can tolerate that, or apple cider vinegar capsules to detox from glyphosate. So that's a kind
That's
of good
great.
thing to have into your routine. Let's see. I think Angelina's saying, I don't, Angelina, are you saying paleo makes a big difference in eating some meat?
Hmm.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and I would say, Alicia, too,
Oh, here
eating
she's got
the
another comment.
soy, yeah, the soy-based meat substitutes, eating those, as most meats are contaminated. I can't say that I've heard that, like in terms of like grass-fed, pasture-raised meats. I feel like a lot of the soy-based meat substitutes have so many additives, and that soy tends to be GMO in this country and a lot of countries. So I think that can tend to be an issue too. So it's interesting. That really hasn't been my experience. What I would say too, in terms of it being expensive, I hear Whole Foods is expensive for meat.
Yeah.
That's actually not where I shop for my meat. I use grassrootscoop.com, or US Wellness Meats, which is called grasslandbeef.com, I think. And if you get those boxes and you freeze them, that's how you can save money. And if you sign up for their email newsletter, they always will have sales and coupons and things like that. So that's a really good place if you're interested in saying, okay, do I incorporate a little bit of animal protein? Because I know for me, animal protein is the most readily absorbed. I get heme iron, which I can't get in plant-based proteins. A lot of plant-based proteins are higher in carb. And so if you're struggling with spikes in blood sugar and things like that, that might be a thing. And then also protein is building blocks in the body. So as we're building, rebuilding, healing, and sealing the gut, that's a major benefit to our healing journey as well.
Yeah. There's so many diets. I've been reading more on the paleo or the carnivore diet recently, and
Me
man,
too.
there's so much stuff they take out. Peppers they take out, nuts they take. I was just like, oh my God.
It's like, it's so, I've read about it, and I see the studies, and it's like, it's jarring. It is like, oh my God, like to see these people that are only, but I have seen in some extreme cases, like really extreme cases where people cannot eat anything else. I can see how it can help short, but again, it's like short term. I would never want to live never having another vegetable or never having another whatever, just like even spices are like off the
Yeah,
chart. I'm like, I'm not
peppers,
gonna
pepper and
just,
stuff.
yeah, I'm not just gonna have meat with salt on it. Like that's terrible. No. That's why I like paleo. I just feel like it's more in moderation. I think paleo gets a rap of like being so carnivore or so meat heavy. And it's like, no, it's just balanced.
Yeah.
I just think if you're doing it well, it's balanced for you.
Yeah, I know we're throwing a lot, we might be throwing out some things that people disagree with here, but when I was on my glucose monitor, I really had to increase protein, I found out. And it's pretty hard to get that amount of protein, all plant. And yeah, I would agree with these kind of soy manufactured things. You're potentially getting a lot of different chemicals and stuff. So yeah, that's an interesting question. Have they tested any grass-fed meat for glyphosate? I mean, I think it's possible just because I know it's in our water. It's sort of like in the rainfall. It's sort of everywhere. But I haven't heard it being a big contamination problem. Just as a fun aside, Alicia, there's a naturopath I follow who got really sick from heavy metal poisoning from organic spinach or kale out of California
I've heard of
because they
that.
use, yeah, they use
Arsenic, right?
no,
Like
hers
it's
was
absorbed.
thallium. Something like
Thallium.
that. Or maybe it was
I've
even a
I've
weirder
heard that.
one.
I know it was so upsetting to hear, but I heard when that came out about kale is absorbing the arsenic or the thallium in the soil, and so then we're eating it, and I'm like, oh please, like
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
but
kale,
it's
like I'm
because
not.
it's not just in the soil. They actually were using wastewater from fracking. That's allowed to be sprayed and still be called organic.
Oh
So
my
it's just,
goodness.
I don't know. I'm kind of, just sharing a bunch of crazy stuff out there. Maybe just
Yeah.
to say that I don't know if like you could kind of poke a hole in any.
Everything. Yes. It's always bio
So
individuality first, like getting
I
in
think
tune with our
so.
body. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can try things and see how you feel. If you've made, I actually was a vegetarian for a number of years,
Me
and
too.
then I was living at high altitude. I was really struggling, and I started adding back in meat, like very consciously, especially at first, just like bison and stuff, and it
Mhm.
really made a difference. So I do think your body, gives you feedback as you go, and same for me with eggs. Like I think I'm like you. I can have them maybe a time or two a week, and that's my max because it's a little too inflammatory for me
Yeah.
otherwise. So yeah, we're all a little bit different. Well,
Yeah.
that was a fun
Love
that
that.
was a fun little segue. Okay. So let's see. Anything else? Your book is on sale on Amazon today. I think I'll just go ahead and buy it there. That way I can write you a review.
Oh,
That's
you're
better,
awesome.
right?
Thank you.
Uh, oh, and you've got Becky Campbell wrote you a nice little thing.
Yes, she's
Awesome.
super sweet.
Cool. Well, I'll
Um,
put the links again over in the chat, you guys. And if you're
awesome.
not feeling like book shopping today, you can also subscribe on her blog for different
Yeah, I have so
freebies.
many, I have hundreds of recipes and lots of good stuff. And when you get on my email list, you get access to more. So,
And this prep gift is that you have
yeah.
like a little mini thing.
So that is like a meal prep guide. That's how I meal prep. So, guys, I have a 2.5-year-old toddler. I work. I don't have time to do 3-hour meal preps. That is so many people will make that assumption because they're like, oh, you must be doing some crazy meal preps. I don't like that. I also don't love leftovers just sitting around constantly. So, what I do is just a basic 20-minute, like, I call it like a base
Nice.
meal prep. Yeah, where I just do like ground meat and some veggies, like a coleslaw veggie mix kind of thing, or kale, or whatever greens that I'll make, and I'll spice it up different ways, and then I use that as my base meal so that I can say, hey, I can throw that over spaghetti squash with sauce one day, and I can put it in a lettuce taco with pesto another day. You can switch it up and make it different each time you eat it, but at least it saves you time, it's efficient, and you get protein and veggies right away with your meal. So that's kind of my hack and what I do.
Yeah, I like that kind of simple meal prep. Like sometimes if I have like a head of romaine, I'm like, well, I don't eat all of it, but I might as well chop it up.
Totally.
So then I
Yeah.
have it,
I gotta do
I'm
something with
not gonna want to
this.
do it later. It's so funny, like just
Yes.
that simple thing of just chopping, we can really resist
Oh,
wanting to put in the
yes.
time. So
Absolutely.
if you're in the mood to chop, just go with it. So here's what that page looks like, you guys. I put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Allison, it was
Thank you.
so lovely to meet you and talk
You
about
too.
some of
Thanks
these
for having
things.
me. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Well, we'll keep in touch. And
Yes,
if
please
anybody,
do.
yeah, has any questions for Allison, you can follow at her website. Yeah, thanks, Pamela.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you
Angelina. Thanks
all.
for
It
all
was
your
great
great
chatting with
questions.
you. Yeah.
Bye,
Take
everyone. See you
care.
next week.
Bye.